I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Jeffrey Gorrelli. Be sure to watch my films. Doors of Perception is on Amazon Prime. Occult Louisiana is on Tubi, Roku, Apple, and many more. We are booking guests for January. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome Jeffrey Gorrelli. He is a researcher of consciousness, electric universe, human origins, astrotheology, history, mythology, and psychology. Jeffrey, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Chris. This is an honor and a privilege. Truly a dream come to fruition.
Well, man, it's always surreal hearing that. Your research is fascinating. We're going to get into that. Your work actually started with history and mathematics and eventually integrated consciousness and the layers of reality beyond perception. Before we get too deep into this is your first time on. Tell us a little bit about yourself and let the audience know how they can find out more if they'd like.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Well, I like one of my favorite quotes has always been, never tell a story without a point and never have a point without a story. So just a little bit about me. I spent the first 5 years of my life as a mute child. I didn't speak. I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, which is the air capital of the United States. At a very young age, Chris, I became fascinated by mathematics and by specifically mathematical probability. And I found kind of solace in the pattern recognition and recognizing patterns, specifically puzzles. I would say that growing up, my mom, she was a mathematics teacher. My dad, he's a bit of a mechanical savant. I kind of compare him to the John Wayne type a little bit. He's strong and silent. But I will kind of explain that something happened at 11. When I was 11 years old, the world became really fast and it was noisy and it felt really dangerous. I can remember from sports to relationships, I became terrified of other people. I lost faith in God, and the prayers only seemed to make my situation worse. So this was an early trauma that kind of sets the way, but I excelled as an academic, but gradually I kind of lost my way, questioning everything from religion to sexuality, or my sexuality. Chris, I always say right before I was ready to give up, I took a hard left and I found drugs and alcohol. Similar to the story of Sigmund Freud, which I was very aware of going into my own addiction, was this descent into a hell realm. And in this hell realm, initially, I remember the first time I had taken an opiate, I could take the abstract thoughts that I was having and I could recommunicate them sequentially and in order in a way I previously could not. So I always joke that before I committed suicide, I found drugs and alcohol, and believe it or not, in the beginning, they kept me alive. Life was exciting. Every day was like, that old song, Live Like You're Dying. And so it was truly an experience, but an experience in which I couldn't get out of. And so years later, my son is born. I couldn't get sober for myself, but I could do it for him. So this kind of sets the pace of my life. I truly, I learned how to become a man when I was in AA. The quotes that that I heard over and over were just, they were guideposts. Quotes like, if you spot it, you got it, that we recognize our own unconscious in others, but we don't consciously know this. Quotes like, this too shall pass, or just for today, or even, selfishness, self-centeredness, which we believe is the root of our troubles, guided by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking. We stepped on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate, seemingly without provocation. But invariably, we find that we make decisions based on self-will that later put us in a position to be hurt. So I learned these valuable lessons, and I really do. I always say I learned how to be a man in Alcoholics Anonymous, and the program is very esoteric, believe it or not. From Bill Wilson, the founder, and his connection not only with psychedelics but with Carl Jung in the study of the human mind. But what they realized was, no matter how much you knew, that we couldn't get ourselves out of this hell. And so the only way in which we could do that is through community, is through service, and by living by spiritual principles and not our character defects. But the biggest one is a connection with God. And I did find God in those rooms. And that is coming from a very analytical, far, left wing, left hemisphere, atheist, agnostic. But Chris, what happened was, years later, it's kind of like when you're in the cold and somebody lets you in the house, or if you're in the cold and you get in a hot tub and it feels great in the beginning, eventually we take that for granted and that becomes kind of the status quo. So humans, what I found needed was novelty. And so I ended up, my story goes from oxycodone and painkillers to heroin and stimulants. As well later I'm not hallucinogens. Now that was part of my later recovery. Yeah. I'll kind of go over that more, but Chris, I did have a bunch of near-death experiences, and I did descend into the abyss, and I did make connection with what I would call as the divine. And Chris, I even though my son was alive, I could not get out of that hell. And so I had heard of the tremendous success that psychedelics were having, specifically ayahuasca. And I had never really experimented. Anyways, I found a retreat center in Orlando, Florida. They required a 14-day detox from all drugs and alcohol. I couldn't make it one day, so I had to kind of bluff it. I had to I did the ceremony, and I had just taken an Adderall and a Suboxone, and I died on the sand that day, Chris. Wow. And that experience, though, is what has guided me to this field today, in which I previously, I was a big time wrestler. I was going to go to college to wrestle. And what I did was I started training my mind and my spirit the same way that I would train my body as an elite athlete. But my experience with ayahuasca in that death state, I remember walking across the sands of the Sahara.
Jeffrey, let me ask you, did you actually have a near-death experience where your bodily functions started to shut down, or was it more a visionary experience?
Definitely visionary, but a combination, because there was only one person that had ever died at that retreat center. And it was because of the combination of ayahuasca with Suboxone, which is a partial opioid. And the guy died there. Wow. So whenever I couldn't hardly speak, but we had a bunch of guides or people that were kind of facilitating the process. And I always, they looked like angels that day. They were all wearing white, and it was so beautiful. But they just held my hand, and I could tell they were terrified because of the previous experience that they had with somebody that had used Suboxone. Yeah. But Chris, what happened was, I remember walking across the savannah, And anyways, I see an elephant that's dead. It's a baby, and the whole family is mourning this baby. And as I approach and I get closer, what I notice is it's not a dead elephant, but it was me at my funeral. And everybody that I had known in my life and cared about, they were there to they were bawling, but there was somebody there that I didn't recognize. And Chris, let me tell you, that was the day I got sober. And 1 year from that day, my daughter was born, and she was the girl at that funeral.
Wow.
So it made me rethink the world of academia, in which I knew so well. I knew the structure of the atomic world, and I could measure it, and I could feel it, and we could see it, and it was all observable. But what I found was a world beyond that world, and that this world emanates from this invisible field, or this what a lot of people would call the etheric plane. And so anyways, my research goes into, after that day, I started studying first guys like Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton, and then moving on to guys like Terence McKenna and even Christopher Bache, who was the lead professor at Youngstown State University. And he had 72 high dose LSD journeys, which he calls mind explorations, in which he attempted to map consciousness. And this man did a fine job, because what he found was absolutely remarkable. But later, I ended up getting into the phenomenon in consciousness. And early on, I fell for a lot of the psyops. I wouldn't even say psyops. It's what the information looks like on the first plane. And then the more that we study this information, this hermeneutical spiral, the information changes over time. And so what I did, Chris, for the last 5 years, I have been reading books from what I found to be the best minds and the most beautiful of mind. And most of those people are the people that you have interviewed. And what I call them is a decorated permutation. It's a break in the code. And if you study the breaks and you log the breaks, and they form a new pattern, and that's even a deeper look or a hidden discourse that only the initiated become aware of. But for some reason, I do think that we are approaching this turning or this reset of our, whether it be construct, world, realm, plant, something. We are having this release of information at this time, and we are. And what I found was that truth always rises, kind of like cream. It always comes out. And so I wonder if this leak of information, which I would say, just like Charles Ford's Book of the Damned, which were facts that didn't fit in that reality he was living in, or any scientific model that he knew of, you were bringing on people that have been correct. I mean, far to say, people might gasp and they might scoff at the information. But what I have found is you have been right over the target. And your guests, again, these are the ones that are what I call the angelic symphony, is a symphony of information. And you are the conductor, and you are the one that is bringing this to the collective. And I do believe, Chris, we are learning and we are deciphering this together.
Right on, man.
So anyways, that's my backstory.
Well, thank you for that. And I do feel blessed every day to have access to these beautiful minds, to be able to learn from them for a couple of hours each day. It's such an amazing thing. You made some great points. There are layers to understand and peel through. The surface layer is what you go through when you first start becoming aware that there's something wrong with reality. And as far as I'm concerned, these layers don't seem to end. There's always more information to unlock. As far as we'll be covering today, where should we start? Because you've got some very interesting things in your talking points: cyclical cataclysms, genetic manipulation, time travel. Where do you want to start with this today?
Well, Chris, I think that I wanted to start with Einstein. Right now is getting a bad rap. It's always easy to, in hindsight, to criticize others and their work, but I live by the quote, we're either a creator or we're a critic. And so Einstein, one of my favorite quotes that he had was, a human being is part of a whole called by us universe, a part limited by time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts, and his feelings as something separated from the rest, an optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion keeps us restricted to our own personal desires and to few persons nearest us. So he says that our task must be to widen our circle of compassion to all of nature and his beauty. Now, Tesla also spent a lifetime studying, and at the very end of his life, he states that all of the years that he had spent in utter work to help humanity, that all he had experienced was humiliation and insults. So I think that that we are all, whether it be Joseph Farrell or whether it be Jason Brashears, each one of these beautiful minds has a slightly different take on what reality looks like. Now, when we put cells into a petri dish, the cell generally will either form perfectly to what it is designed to perform. So whether that be a neuron or a skin cell, I think we all have a certain mission or a certain strength that we can basically give back to the world. So the way I figured it, Chris, was we only had, give or take, 120 years at the most in time as an Adamic human, and that we have 24 hours a day. And so we had to be very, very selective on what we studied. And so I found that the fields of history, I had to better know mythology, and to know mythology, I had to better know philosophy. And when I got to know philosophy, I had to learn linguistics, and to learn linguistics, I had to get into the fields of holography, or the study of light and how it's projected. And then I had to get into the study of harmonics and how everything in this physical world vibrates between worlds. And then it just went on and on and on, all the way to astrotheology. And so I've kind of narrowed my lens into these fields per se, because we just don't have that much time. I'm raising 3 kids. That's my pride and joy, is my three children.
It's still a pretty wide beam you got there to break down.
Absolutely. I wanted to start with Charles Fort. So Charles Fort had committed an entire lifetime to research. And in that research, the Book of the Damned is known, and some of his other published works are widely known, but a lot of people don't know of Book X and Book Y. Now, these were both unpublished. He could not get these works published, and in a fit of rage, Fort burned the manuscript, or the documents. But from what was saved, there was a quote that he had, and it was that, I think we humans are property. I should say that I think we belong to something. That one time this earth was no man's land. The other worlds explored and colonized here. They fought amongst themselves for possession. But now something owns this earth, all others warned off. And when I heard this quote, Chris, as crazy as it sounds, there are many other researchers that had came to the same conclusion, whether that be a book from Robert Morningsky, which is called the Terra Papers. This was written about a downed ship on the day of August 13th, 1947. He believes that the Air Force used psionics to down an aircraft in the Four Corners region of New Mexico, and he has a lot of proof for it. Now, this story was kept in his tribal community and was never released. And this story, basically, he has this quote: "We are not alone. The astronomers are wrong. The scientists are wrong. They are here. We cannot see them because they hide. They hide in plain sight. We are their servants. We are their slaves. We are their property. We are theirs. And this is Morning Sky, who his grandfather and 5 men set off on a vision quest. And on that night, when that ship crashed, they found a living being inside of the ship, and he was injured badly enough that he was not able to speak for some time. But when nursed back to health, he told the most beautiful story of what he calls the true history of humanity, and that essentially we are the new kids on the block. Now, again, Chris, if this story heard alone, it sounds remarkable. It sounds like, Morning Sky might be getting MK Ultra, but this story was kept in his tribe as they keep the information, but they felt that it was so important that it needed to be shared with the broader world. Morning Sky used this as his thesis to graduate college, and he was almost thrown out of college for simply reciting the story that his grandfather had held on to about this crash.
His grandfather found out about this again, how?
His grandfather, on the night of August 13th, him and 5 other Apache men were out on a vision quest when they saw what they call as a falling star, and they followed it. And when they did, to their surprise, there was a crashed disc, and in the wreckage was a living being, and they called him Star Elder. Now, Star Elder lived with the Apache nation for what Morning Sky says was a period of about 4 months.
So they actually found a being and nursed it back to health, you would say?
Absolutely. Wow. Absolutely. And the story is remarkable. Now, Morning Sky describes how that in Apache tradition, they don't lie. They live by an honor code. And even the crashed survivor, whose name was Beck T, or Star Elder, he taught them how to run 15 miles up to the top of the mountain with a mouthful of water, run back the mountain, down the mountain, and then spit the water out at his feet. He taught them how to catch arrows in midair. He also told them that the most important thing for us to do was to find passion, no matter what that looked like. Now, Star Elder left. After 4 months, he left. They don't know where he went, but they remembered this story, and they broke tradition by sharing this with the broader world. Robert does not speak anymore because he describes a situation in which this story has ruined his life. That his wife died shortly after publishing the Terra Papers, and that everything has been tragic, that he has been, like Tesla, mocked and ridiculed for even just describing the string of events that happened that day.
What did this being describe to him as the beginning of human creation?
Well, kind of like, some sort of cosmic egg or universal energy that exploded. And now when he recited this human history, they stated that he reminded them of a child at school reciting what he had learned from his teachers. And so he pulled out what they called as a mace stone, or a Gurku crystal. And this crystal contained the information similar to the way that we would pull out a computer chip or a computer. And he describes that when this cosmic egg exploded, it created a physical universe. And in that physical universe, that different forms of the creator basically evolved. And they first evolved in Eridanus. And it was a reptilian form, which was perfect for space travel because they could hibernate between these long distances. and they could go into these states of kind of like Burmation or, hibernation. And they made it to Orion and created this beautiful empire. Now, they say that Earth is in Orion, that we are in the spiral arm of Orion, and that we just don't realize that. And that there was essentially a human-like civilization that started, and I believe it was the Pleiades, but there was also a human-like dog that started in Sirius. And he believes that is the connection to the Canaanites, is this connection with Sirius. Now, Sirius isn't too far from us, at least according to Bekti, but he basically says Earth was originally a breakaway colony of Sirius. And when Earth was first formed, it was much bigger. Now, he talks about that humans on Earth had developed, and there was essentially a war that happened between Sirius and between Earth, because the humans had become just as advanced as their creators in Sirius. Anyways, after this war, Earth was destroyed, or at that time it was called Tiamat, and Tiamat was destroyed, and it fell from its position into the place that it is in today, which we would know is the third position from the sun, and that Earth is much denser, that the lifespans have changed, and that Earth life re-evolved here, and it was gradually updated and upgraded. But he still states that Orion wants to control the same way that we pay royalties to Israel and to the Vatican and to London. He believes that our planet, and again, a lot of this missing money, a lot of our materials and minerals that seem to have came up missing recently, can be attributed to this connection to Orion and to Sirius and the Pleiades.
Was this being that communicated all this a part of the faction that is in control of the planet or in control of humanity?
That is up for speculation. He claims that his ship was downed by enemy forces. And anyways, when he describes this war, it was basically between Orion and between Sirius for the rights of humanity and the mineral rights of Earth.
Did he give any description of the being and the beings on Orion or otherwise?
Yeah. Now, he said that the being looked human, but not fully human. He looked childlike, is what they said. They did state that the rulers of Orion were of reptilian nature, and they worship a goddess, that it is matriarchal. And anything outside of that, I would have to speculate.
There's some wonderful researchers who have been presenting alternative history possibilities, multiple resets throughout our history, rises and falls of civilizations. Would you say that these beings, these Orion beings, were always either in control or trying to gain control of the planet?
Yeah, Chris, I think so. And I have evidence to back this up. I found physical proof. I mean, again, some of my, I guess, at least with my bibliography, the people that I used the most were Pierre Sabak, and you interviewed Pierre. I love that interview, but he talks about that Orion is the hidden hand. And there's another one, George Haas. So George Haas was a famous artist, and he was brought in to learn how to read hieroglyphics by some of the most influential scholars. And after spending a lifetime of reading hieroglyphics, George Haas, he says that this was his conclusion. He believes that advanced beings left their world to come to Earth as a breakaway colony, that they set up star forts on Mars, Venus, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, that this group developed avatars to live here. They altered them to perfection. They mated with those avatars and those people that they created, but then that they were spotted by their home planet. And when they were spotted, they went to war against them using what they could fashion here. And so they used what they could, and they fashioned humans to be a worker and a soldier for them. And this was a quote by George Haas, who's a hieroglyphic scholar. Now, Anton Parks, again, I just didn't want to hear one take on this. I wanted to see this from multiple viewpoints. And so I translated the work of Anton Parks, who is considered to be one of the only people on the planet that could translate the Sumerian tablets. And he believes that giants came to our wandering planet. They came to bring life. They were guided by the laws of the predator universe. They fashioned an intelligent species like them. Educating these newborns, they laid the foundations of culture, society, language, and religion. They were not flawless. They were not gods of love. They were fallible like we are. Remember, they made us in our image. And that was another synopsis of what he had taken from a lot of the tablets that he had read.
You have any insights into the level of control these beings currently have over the planet?
Even in our thinking, the way that we think, when we get a thought or an idea, I have found it that these ideas almost seem to be guided or seeded by something. And for me, I have always tried to connect with the higher, the more benevolent spirits. And so they do seem to be, I guess, to me, I don't know how to say this, but they seem to be articulating some sort of extraterrestrial infiltration, whether that be from our universities to our medical systems to our judicial systems. They seem to, I would say, take over the most important aspects of those, but all of it is occulted.
It would make sense as to why our systems are so anti-human. Now, I want to get to some of the talking points you have here, starting with the dark star or tertiary field. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Chris, the more that I studied in this field, and I call this the alternative community, and I started to see patterns. Now, a big one was this connection, even with our leaders, guys like Donald Trump, and this dark star connection, or this connection to Set. I've seen it also with Elon Musk. I've seen it with the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians. There seems to be this aspect of a return of either a binary twin star that may have collapsed, or another star that is being captured from another solar system, or potentially the inner star, or representing the inner sun of the planet, which would be this plasmic core that had been ejected from the formation of our sun. The tertiary field is purely Jason Breshears' work. Now, Jason Breshears' work is so anomalous that I cannot even find it on the internet. But I did find it in the library. I found it at my local library. Tertiary field dynamics. Basically like the MasterCard logo, how this tertiary field is returning. and that these two toroidal fields basically overlap. And when they overlap, they share information. And this could explain the histories where we have these gigantic reptiles that seem to come out of nowhere and then vanish. And so, everybody scoffs. Like, I know at the higher levels, they really do scoff at this reptilian aspect, but I have connected both of those, the dark star and the reptile. I don't know how they're connected, but mathematically speaking, I cannot see, you can't see that many coincidences and it not be true. So there's something going on there. I just don't think we are in the circle of information.
As far as a returning planet, I've heard many theories. Planet X, Nibiru coming back. Nibiru is inhabited by the Anunnaki, and every however many thousands of years, it has a return near Earth, and it may cause cataclysms and things of this nature.
This is my leading theory too, is now grammatically, we can see a connection between Nibiru and Hebrew. Those two are grammatically connected. And that is the hidden artifact found in language by Pierre Sabak, one of the most beautiful minds that I had found. And there is a connection. Now, Wayne Herschel is another scholar that I wanted to bring into the conversation, because his research was essentially taking ancient star maps and using a Masonic tracing board and placing that over these ancient maps. And sure enough, the star of Ra, in which he is predicting in 2027 that the star of Ra is a trinary star of Sirius, and that it's also captured by our sun's gravitational pull. Now, Tesla always said that the sun is basically absorbing more energy than it's putting out. And so I think that's really important to understand. Earth has also been called the traveling star by many. Now, not to confuse everybody, but it's very valid. Another interview that you did was with Samuel Chong and his translations of the book Abduction from the Ninth Planet. Now, that ninth planet is Theoban, which is also connected back to Alpha Draconis, which is also connected back to Orion, or the hidden hand. Now, somehow, again, mathematically, this can't come up, but he talks about this sharing of information between their world and his. And so, again, Chris, mathematically, we can't have this many coincidences without some truth being there.
In your talking points, you mentioned comets and pandemics and orbs in history. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Oh, absolutely. Now, what I had found was that was one of the most forbidden aspects of our history, was this connection between comets and between pandemics. Now, believe it or not, there was a reported comet that hit Curry, Nigeria, weeks before the pandemic. Now, I know everybody is going to say conspiracy, but hear me out. There has been a cover-up of this comet strike in Nigeria that happened 2 weeks before. Oh, dang. Yeah. Okay. And that's why I thought today you might be one of the only people that I could have this conversation with.
No, right on.
Because you have
much of the audience may not have heard about this.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to, again, never tell a story without a point, never have a point without a story. So here's the deal. One of our leading researchers into comets and the connection with pandemics had passed away. And I did find this to be a forbidden aspect. Jason Brashears has shown all kinds of videos from the fires in LA and orb activity to the fires of legends of orbs near and dear to the Chicago fire. So we have, and also in Maui, this is another thing that was, orbs were seen in Maui.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is this a technology, Chris? Is this our government? Is this the hidden hand? Is this, a part of our construct, that does edits to make history easy? I did find that most of our mysteries were had to be encoded in either movement in sports, architecture, through fiction, and through poem, through our myths, that you couldn't give these secrets away. But right now we do seem to be in a time where there is this apocalypsing of information, where we are seeing the return of the orbs, a return of these angelic emissaries from other worlds, because I have found honest individuals telling truthful story after story after story about these encounters recently. And so as we are awaiting, I would say many of the beautiful mind have kind of spoken of this collapsing of our world starting in 2025 and ending in 2040. And so I guess with comets and epidemics, what I did found one of the most common elements of the occult community was cyclical cataclysm, and how the earth is destroyed every 550 years, and that we are approaching one of these great cycles, and that we all just need to be very courageous and brave. The Great Pyramid, Chris, talks about a time in which Egypt was like the bustling cities of New York City and LA, and that something appeared in the sky, and that they all knew that they would perish, and that they built the Great Pyramid to encode the secrets of their civilization. And so whether we like it or not, Chris, we might be in one of those periods. And so I think we are seeing the same kind of, and again, it was probably a small fraction of that society that were trying to describe their impending doom. Now, the Aura Linda talks about the same thing, about this approaching, and to them, it was a flood, but a group of people that all knew they were going to die, and there was nothing that they could do to stop it.
I want to go back to mathematical probability and the nature of our reality. How would you best describe what is happening with things like the Mandela effect, predictive programming, synchronicities, symbolism in films and entertainment that seem to predict future events, things like that? What's your understanding of what could be happening there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, kind of back to Pierre Sabak and Jason Brashears, because I don't want to take credit for their ideas, but they both bring up that we are in the world of illusion. We are in this kingdom of illusion, and this is the great Maya or the Matrix, and that the leaders of this world, the celebrities, the shot callers, that they basically are the deceivers or the decipherati. They are the hidden hand that makes these adjustments, that they are the Ajiji that makes this physical reality seem a lot more real. And I don't think it's nefarious, Chris. I do think it's for the experience that essentially these edits happen. Now, again, we're old enough to look back at September 11th and the events that happened in 2001, and we can see the uniformitarian history that is spoken of, which, as we both know, is probably not the true log of events or sequence of events. That history is something that is kind of, because we are all having 8.2 billion different realities, that this would be the agreed upon reality or the collective reality. Now, Jay Parker, in his interview with you, he talks about the most important thing to the Illuminati was the collective mind. And I couldn't understand why that was. And now I do, because we are not from here. I do believe we are from what we would call as heaven or the real universe, and that we are here to grow our souls, and that the physical or the atomic world is simply an illusion. And so that's kind of my, I would say, 2 cents on that, Chris.
Would you also say that the ruling class and those unseen forces beyond that are using us in a sense for energy and to express, because they don't have the same creative capabilities as we do? They can't thrive without us.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that was my general take about these extraterrestrials as well, from Orion and from the Pleiades specifically, was that they were so intelligent that they had lost this creative aspect. They had lost their sense of humor, that they had become so rigid in their belief systems, and that they were essentially, that Earth was the stage in which they got to perform in the play, or they were the conductors of the play. I don't know which one. I think they are a part of the play as well. And I don't think it's all nefarious. I really don't. But to answer your question about the loosh, there is a mathematical probability that the term loosh is connected back to Lucifer. Now, what I did find, as well as probably what you had found, these ruling bloodlines are definitely connected to Lucifer somehow. And they seem to be the bloodlines of Lucifer. And I do think that they are probably parasitical in nature, and I don't think they are natural here. I don't think that they fit in this reality. And so they don't have the same kind of love and compassion and empathy that you and I would display, or that many of the human family, because even the word human comes from hue, which is spiritual light, and then man, which is connected to manifest. So it's spiritual light manifested, and that's who we are. I think we are all connected to Christ, and they are connected to Lucifer. And I do think there's a difference.
Going back to your talking points, time travel. Where do you want to go with time travel?
Well, Jason Giorgiani Riza has got me fascinated by philosophy. He talks about this would be a natural progression of human technology, that we should have perfected time travel years ago. Now, my good friend who had passed away, Sean David Morton, wrote a book, The Sumerian War, and he wrote a book, one of my favorites is the Vril Damon Diaries. And he talks about how his uncle, Fred Bell, had basically perfected time travel. He was a professor. He graduated college at the age of 13. This guy was brilliant. And he made contact with a group from the Pleiades as well. And anyways, Sean describes a pyramid in which he had made, and he was able to travel back in time, but he had to match the speed of time, which was like a river. And anyways, they all speak of humans, this, I would say, a select group of humans that have perfected this technology. That includes Nikola Tesla, because that was my first brilliant mind that I researched. Tesla had perfected time travel. And according to Tesla, he lived on the 33rd floor of the New Yorker Hotel. The guy was a wizard, an alchemist, and a scientist. This man had it all. And it just so happens that Donald Trump's uncle, finds the technology. Now, Chris, you can't make this stuff up. And this is why I call it the greatest story ever told, because with that technology, they could alter and control the future. in which it seems like they may have. I mean, that's just a speculation on my part.
It is very interesting when you see how everything is unfolded.
But I do think that if you were in control of time travel, well, that changes everything. And so that's why whenever we're trying to create this uniformitarian model, I guess, and we're trying to come up with a thesis on who and what we are and where we come from, and we can only know so much because the physical, again, is an illusion. So I felt like it's very much like chess or like playing college March Madness when you're filling out the bracket. If you get cosmology wrong, or if you get one of your bracket answers wrong, it changes the whole entire scope of the bracket. So what I started doing was like filling out brackets where we would have, for the first cosmology, we would have, a simulation model. Then we would have a uniformitarian model. Then we would have a model based on organic creation from intelligent design. And so we would have to go out and we would fill it out similar to the way that we would fill, if this is true, then that. Now, believe it or not, Laura Knight Yasik, another interview from your past, in the Cassiopean experiment, she talks about at the end of Babylon that they were seeing these shining ones, or these emissaries that were coming from heaven. And what they were doing was they were taking the language and they were playing with the words, and they were just kind of like doing a word play. And they started finding connections that previously they were unaware of. And this was the earliest form of synchromysticism, from what I understand. And it was in the times of Enoch. And they were doing the exact same thing that we are doing today.
So what do you mean by they were using language to manipulate reality in a way?
Well, I don't know if it was, to manipulate and to better understand reality. So here's a quick one, and this is one of my favorite word plays. But the word Aries, we know Aries goes with Aryan. We could also say that mathematically that is connected to Tartarian. Mathematically, that is connected to Sumerian. The Aryan is at the end. That is also connected to Lemurian. That is also, if we go back to Aries, they would throw in, so Mars is Aries in astrotheology. And so the connection would be red. So then they would go to the Red Cross, Red Shield. And then from that, we would go Rosicrucian, Rosalind Chapel, and so on. But even vril and viral, and the term viral would go into mind virus. We could go into Wetiko. We could go back to the apple, where maybe they ate the spoiled fruit because of this virus, or got a virus from the fruit. So this is how they were basically trying to understand this invisible world and this hidden discourse that they had there.
I am terrible at math, but a few times you mentioned the mathematical connections between, for example, words, like you were just saying. Could you get a little bit deeper into what that means?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my favorite translator, or I would say linguist, is Anton Parks. Now, the only problem is, Chris, all of his research is in French. But since we have these beautiful technologies today, I was able to translate the French into English. And he had done the same thing. He had found that there was a connection between the syllabaries of the Akkadian Sumero syllabaries, and there was a mathematical connection to the syllabaries of Latin, Germanic, English, pretty much all the language, every language known to man. was going back into that Assyro it's an Assyrian Sumero syllabary. And so to better answer your question, I would just say that the words Tartar and Barbar, if you did Tartarian and Barbarian, we could say with a high mathematical probability that those words are grammatically connected somehow. And what I had found, Chris, is that I call this the human experiment, and that the human experiment was seeded from the stars, that the stars act as these giant seed banks that contain these light codes, and that the light codes contain genomes. They contain alphabets and language, and that they also they also are our holy books. This is where we get our holography, are from these light codes, and that is one of the big secrets of religion, is the study of light. But what I had found was that language seems to be seeded from what I would say is from heaven or from above. And so that language all does go back to the Tower of Babel and this confusion of tongues. Now, I believe that we were all using sign language, or the true sign language, which was telepathy, and that the Tower of Babel was humans coming together against the forces of evil at this time to build a bridge to heaven and to leave this physical plane. I think the story had been reversed, that we were trying to, that our group was trying to unify with God and not kill God, because I just don't see that evil in a lot of the ordinary humans. I think that is in more of the ruling class, or the RH negatives, which don't seem to be from here. But I do think there is this Prometheus effect. And even in the word Prometheus is Promithras. Promithras is connected. Linguistically, it is connected. But I do believe like this colonizing effect, or this bringing of fire, which I believe from the north or from Hyperborea, that the etheric humans brought the gifts of culture, plasma, fire, magic, and fire being electricity. And that it came from the north, and that they seeded this physical world. And Jason always talks about that we may be in the photo negative of a real reality, that even our life might be more of the death process, and that the real world and the real universe that we come from is perfect, and that you can't grow when you're sitting in a perfect atmosphere. You have to go through going through boot camp, and that this is boot camp for our soul, Chris.
I often consider that very heavily myself. I think it is a great explanation for the nature of this existence. Last few minutes we have, let's talk a little bit about crystals and technology.
Absolutely, Chris. Absolutely. So, whether it be our diamond rings that we give our most precious loved one, to the perfect crystal that we know as the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is Joseph Farrell basically professes that it is perfect crystallography mixed in with high octane electricity and also mercury from below. I would say that even to our brain, which seems to work very much like a crystal. Now, the work of Damien Dumar says that we have this crystalline structure within our brain and within the dura mater that does not allow for us to see reality as it is. And when we injure when the forceps is injured, that sometimes we can glimpse into other realities. And that's why I do think autism and even autism and sometimes these near-death experiences, we get glimpse beyond the veil. But they do compare the brain to a crystal and a copper wire. I think most of our radios are essentially quartz crystal and copper. And so I do think that technology is kind of a gift that we were given that we were not mature enough for yet. And Chris, I could see technology causing the collapse of our world as we know it. I am not probably the guy to ask about crystals because I love crystals. I just don't know that much about them, but I do know that within the research, it comes up over and over and over, whether that be the Lucifer's crown and his crown jewel that fell from Lucifer on his way into the abyss. And they talk about these maystones that were littered all over our planet, and that the maystone contains all of the information. It's like the Hall of Records or our books of life. That these maystones contain everything. And in my research, that the stolen tablets of Zu are these lost maystones of Lucifer. Now, Lucifer is, to me, the fallen planet that we knew as Tiamat and that fell into this dimension. And this is coming from Laura Knight Josic and her Cassiopean experiment, that we were the fallen angels and that Earth is hard because we need to relearn and rethink the way in which that we go about the world, and that we have to live by this natural law. We have to follow the laws of the Creator, and that we needed an experience to grow. But I do think that as we continue to increase our technology, that we will continue to lose our humanity. I have kind of gotten into prophecy and divination and kind of what we can expect for the next 15 years. And it is connected to technology and to the maystones. But it's basically the breaking down of the family across the whole earth, that women will lose the protection of men, kind of this Handmaid's Tale, that there'll be this divine separation between the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. And this is explained in the Colburn Bible, which the Colburn Bible was a book that survived the flood of Noah. And it was the only surviving copy from antediluvian times. And it talks about these days that we're in, and basically this big reset that Jason believes is going to happen in 2040 and 2046 with the return of the comet or tertiary field known as the Phoenix. Now, I do believe there is a connection to these FEMA camps and to the bunkers that are being built worldwide. We can all agree that bunkers are being built by the world's elite, and we don't know why. We also are seeing the melting of the poles right now in Antarctica and in the North Pole, and our elites are able to see what is under the ice, and we are not currently. I do think there will be a return of the vapor canopy. I think we're going to watch the breaking down of all our systems, from Social Security to our healthcare systems. I think that there will become these kings of earth, and they will be connected to the tech bros, that these tech kings, they own more money currently than all of the countries in Africa in their GDP. They own more money than everybody. They own 99% of the pie and have overtaken the bloodlines. And I do think that we are looking at a day and age which there will be no land to buy, and we will own nothing and be happy. And for my children and their children's children, that we have to do something about this crisis, Chris. But I do think that because of technology, that it will be easier to capitalize on the weak, to capitalize on the elderly, and to continue. We can see this. Instead of having a friend to talk to, we have therapy ads that pop up over and over. Get a therapist, pay for him. You know, everything is being capitalized on. And I do think it is all leading up to an event that will happen in 2040 where the technology will be wiped.
Now, I'm familiar with Jason Brashear's theory about the Phoenix event, and what you're describing unfolding does appear to be happening as we speak, but it paints a picture of a very bleak future. Do you think that there is a way to derail the current trajectory that we're on? There does seem to be more people than ever that are becoming aware of the problems. The solutions, though, are very scarce. Do you think that there is hope, and how could we navigate this?
Absolutely. There's definitely hope, Chris. I do think we are going to see humanity come together. Albert Pike, who we can't believe a word that he says, he's a Freemason and he just can't be trusted. So anyways, he talks about this creation of a one world government. Now, Chris, this is my take on it. I do think that the world needs to unite, but it needs to unite without government, that we need to come together in a state of love and a state of caring for each other. And I think that the only thing that we can do now is that we can, I think that through service work and service to others, that daily prayer and a connection to our Creator, and that a collective getting together and moving our bodies and creating new systems that make sense and that build each other up. And similar to the way that Tim Kelly, he kind of outlines the perfect society and how we could do that through focusing on having plentiful food for our people, clean drinking water, I think sanitation and systems that work. I think this is going to be our chance. But I do think that, again, kind of like my research, I feel like I had been guided, that each beautiful mind that I would read their book or turn into their research, that it was almost being guided to me. So I wonder if some of what we are experiencing today is our collective karma, the way that we treat each other, the way that we act, the way that we think, the way that the way that we move through the world. This could be a collective karma, because Charles Hull had a famous story about the tall whites, and he said that they thought of us like a virus, from the way that we think to the way that we act, the way that we treat each other, that the only hope that we had was to come together and to unite around natural law and to connect with our Creator, and that is God, and that is a universal energy that we all contain within our souls, our solar plexus, and that will leave our body upon death. But that, again, if we die in this world, that we probably go back to a perfect world, Chris. That's why the more that I look at this situation, I don't think the elites are nefarious. I don't think that these bloodlines, again, as bleak as it sounds, I just think this is necessary for our soul growth, and that we can't be scared. And in the face of fear, that our true character comes out when we are courageous and we stand by our honor and our integrity, and we do the next right thing for the right reason. And very simply, Chris, that we display more love, empathy, and imagination, and that we're going to be fine no matter what.
Right on. Very interesting information. Jeffrey, before I let you go, let the audience know how they can find out more about you if they're interested.
Well, Chris, currently I'm starting the journey in which you started many years ago, which is finally leaving the day job.
Right on.
You know, I wanted to start a podcast 5 years ago, but I didn't have enough knowledge. And so I had to sit down and I had to get better. I had to learn, and that's what I've done. And now that I have left my job as of 2 weeks ago, I am going at this full time. I love the way that Dark Journalist has his podcast set up, and I would love to have a co-host to my podcast. So if anybody is listening and they feel the same kind of passion, I would love to connect with like minds. I am in the process of putting hundreds of videos that I have recorded onto my platform channel, but you can connect through X right now. I'm not selling anything. I'm here for humanity. I'm here for our children. As all the Native Americans would always think 7 generations ahead, they would plan out their world to take care of their children and their children's children and their children's children. And so really today, my goal was to connect with this community. And I would love for you fellow travelers, you wayward souls, to reach out and connect with me. That's all
right
I
on.
ask.
And what is the name of the podcast, and how can they find it?
The podcast is Psychics, and it's polyglottal, similar. It has different meanings on different dimensions. So mind, body, spirit, philosophy, mythology, and history, and also the life, death, and rebirth is what it represents. But Psychics is spelled Psy, P-S-Y, and there's the Q-I for energy, and the X, which is you, and it represents your pure potentiality. I believe that our life is God's gift to us, and that what we do in this life is our gift back to our Creator.
Right on. Jeffrey, thank you so much. Definitely love to talk again in the future. And until next time, everyone, have a wonderful evening. We will talk again tomorrow. Hello, friends. I am so excited to tell you about Independent Media Token. Independent Media Token is a brand new way to show your support for independent media without having to donate a dime. Independent Media Token is a cryptocurrency on the Solana blockchain designed to generate funds to promote and foster the growth of independent content creators, allowing them to engage in their art without having to worry about being demonetized. Through a network of media partners, of which you yourself can become a part of, Independent Media Token's goal is to ensure the powers that be can never cut off all of our areas of funding and censor the only free voices left in the world. Join the movement today. You can pick up Independent Media Token using Phantom Wallet or the Solana wallet of your choice, where you can easily swap your Solana for IMT. Grab some IMT today, and remember to always know your team. To learn more, visit independentmediatoken.com or use the link right in the description. Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion? Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order. If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brainsupreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order.